Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Infernity Yugioh deck profile for post the January 2024 ban list. We had Infernity Archfiend come to 3 on the latest ban list, so pretty awesome for some power up for the Infernity deck. We still have Infernity Launcher at 1, but Infernity Archfiend definitely will add some consistency just to opening up this card to be special summoned out to continue the monster mash that you can do with the many different cards that we run in the Infernity deck, going for more of a Fiend lineup with all the other different support you can run for the deck, but very happy with the 3 copies that can be added in addition to the deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. Now, I know some people have been mixing around Horus with this deck, being able to just dwindle your hand down to nothing by setting up the Horus monsters in the graveyard. I wanted to go for more of a pure variant, though, for this profile, so that's what we'll be sticking for. But starting off with the newest card off the list, being Infernity Archfiend. When you draw this card, except during the damage step, if you have no other cards in your hand, you can reveal this card, special summon this card from your hand, and when it's special summoned, you can add 1 Infernity card from your deck to your hand. You must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. But being able just to add any of the variety of Infernity cards we have, like Infernity Barrier, Infernity Launcher, you name it, we have all of these cards available to us in our arsenal, and a much more consistent way to at least set up this combo with this card now at 3. And we are also running 3 copies of Infernity Beetle for the other 3 of in the deck. While you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card to special summon up to 2 Infernity Beetle from your deck. So being able to grab 2 more copies of this card, having another level 4 on the field, can give us access to cards like Infernity Doom Archfiend, going for this synchro play, being one of the best synchro monsters in the extra deck for that setup, but just having consistency to grab the other 2 tuner monsters, being the other 2 Infernity Beetles. Using this card is another big help just by having no hand, like the deck is meant to do. And I do want to run 2 copies of Infernity Necromancer. Sadly, I couldn't find where my last copy was, so I have 1 placeholder just being Infernity Wildcat in the deck. When it's normal summon, you change it to defense, and while you have no cards in your hand, it gains the following effect of being able to special summon an Infernity monster from your graveyard, except for Necromancer. So a great way to make use of the Archfiend that can be in our graveyard as well. Having no cards in our hand just can help to loop that Infernity Archfiend search power that the card can use. And also 2 copies of Infernity Mirage. This card cannot be special summoned from the graveyard, and if you have no cards in your hand, you can tribute this card to select 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard and special summon those monsters, just grabbing you resources once again, whether it be Necromancer or Archfiend. You can just grab those cards and loop them thanks to Mirage. You can't grab Mirage off Mirage, sadly, but we only need this as a 2 of because it can be special summoned from the deck, giving us a target for 1-for-1 also. And then also the 2 copies of Infernity Wildcat along with the 1 placeholder copy I had. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending 1 other Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard. So another way to set up the 3 of Infernity Archfiend in our hand in the graveyard to special summon back out again by special summoning this card out, and having this card also be a viable synchro option with cards like Necromancer being a tuner on the field to then also go for Doom Archfiend using this monster as well. And while you have no cards in your hand, you can banish 1 Infernity monster from your graveyard to increase or decrease the level of this card by 1, meaning it can also work with some of our other monsters, including Archfiend, to then go for level 8 synchros or go for the level 6 synchro we mentioned before as well. And for the 1-ofs, the 1 copy of Infernity Conjurer, while you have no cards in your hand, monsters your opponent control lose 800 attack. While you have no cards in your hand and this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect once per turn, but just another way to grab a resource from the graveyard to use. And the 1 copy of Infernity General, if you have no cards in your hand, you can banish this card from your graveyard to target 2 level 3 or lower Infernity monsters in your graveyard and special summon them from the graveyard but negate their effects. Just more targets for Wildcat and Necromancer as more resources to use on the field as well, with the non-Infernity monsters we run being 2 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld and 1 Archfiend Heiress for the target, or any of the other Fiend monsters that we run that are level 3 that can be summoned out thanks to Tour Guide as well. You can't use them for synchro, but at least you can go for more of the link spam using Tour Guide for that setup, while giving you other access monsters like Heiress in the graveyard to then use for plays. And also 2 copies of Stygian Street Patrol, another card to just have for the graveyard setup to then special summon a Fiend type monster with 2,000 or less attack from your hand. So then you have another way to special summon Archfiend if it happens to be in your hand from your field. If it's the last card in your hand, you'll also get that additional search. And for the spells, as I said before, Launcher is still at 1, but we do run the 1 copy because it can be just as easily searched thanks to Archfiend. Once per turn, you can send 1 Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard to send this card to the graveyard, then target up to 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard, special summon them. You must have no cards in your hand to activate and resolve this effect. So on top of just having the send of an Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard, you can also send this card from your field to the graveyard to target those monsters and special summon. They're two separate effects, but you have the send power and set up power to at least use launcher to have no cards in your hand by just being able to set up other Infernity monsters in your graveyard. Also, 2 copies of Infernity Paranoia. You can tribute 1 dark monster to special summon 1 Infernity monster from your deck or graveyard at the same level but a different name. So depending on what you might want to target with this card, more special summon plays with this one as well, and then being able to banish this card from your graveyard to target an Infernity monster in your graveyard to add back to your hand. And for some of the other cards, 3 copies of this creepy little punk. It's always treated as an Infernity card, so it could potentially be another search off of Archfiend. You special summon 1 of your Infernity monsters that is banished during your graveyard or in your hand as well. And if a face-up Infernity monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while this card's in your graveyard, you can set this card. So it's just another special summon card, but also recyclable from the graveyard. We run 3 just so we have the more targets to use as just another card to grab a special summon as well. With the last of our Infernity spells being the 1 copy of Contract with the Void, having 3 or more cards in your hand, being able to discard it, then special summon 1 Infernity monster with level 8 Dark Dragon Synchro from your graveyard, using those resources as basically a graveyard synchro summon, and 1 copy of Zero Max. If you have no cards in your hand, select 1 Infernity monster in your graveyard and special summon it and destroy all face-up monsters on the field with attack lower than the special summon monster. So depending on the Infernity monster that you may be able to special summon as well, you can wipe out a good number of different cards that are on the field of your opponents. And also 3 copies of Void Apocalypse. You can discard 1 card to send 1 Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, and you can have this card for that setup. Just being able to send and discard 1 card, you could set up other Fiend monsters and then send other ones like Infernity Archfiend Eris, and use them to also set up cards like Stygian Street Patrol in the graveyard to gain you those special summons. I also run the 1 copy of Card Destruction, more set up in the graveyard as well. 1 for 1 and 1 Call by the Grave to finish off the rest of the spells. We're not running any hand traps or anything like that. We don't want to have anything we save in our hand. You want to be able to empty out your hand and have no fear of them being stuck there to begin with. That's why we don't have the hand trap lineup. But also 2 copies of Infernity Barrier for the counter trap option, just a card to set on the field, so it really doesn't take away from cards that could get cluttered up in your hand. Same with 2 copies of Infernity Break. If you have no cards in your hand, target 1 Infernity card you can in your graveyard and 1 card your opponent controls, banish the first one and destroy the second target. So targeting the Infernity card in your graveyard and having that banish option to then target and destroy a card your opponent controls. With the last of the traps being 3 infinite permanents. I know this kind of counts as a hand trap, but if you do happen to go second against your opponent, you can at least activate from your hand, not only taking away cards from the number of cards in your hand, but also then giving you just another trap if your turn does come around the next turn to be able to at least set it, unlike cards like Ash Blossom and Effect Veiler, which have to remain in your hand to begin with. And then for the Synchro monsters, the 1 copy of Infernity Doom Archfiend. Once per turn, you can target 1 face-up card on the field, negates effects until the end of this turn. Then if you have no cards in your hand, you can destroy it. While you have then this card, no cards in your hand, if this card battles an opponent's monster, any battle card damage this card inflicts to your opponent is doubled. And a Dark Synchro that was summoned using this card's material can make up to 2 attacks during each battle phase. So you can use cards like your Infernity Wildcat to reduce the level, making it a level 2 to then synchro with this card, or cards like your Infernity Beetle, doing the same setup to at least then give some of your bigger monsters like your 100 Eyes Demon Dragon or Infernity Doom Dragon or Void Ogre Dragon to then be able to summon them out and use for the 2 attacks along with their own powerhouse effects that they may have. Also, the 1 copy of new off the ban list, Ib the World Chalice Justiciar. For this card Synchro Summon, you have the option when Synchro Summon for this play from the sent to the graveyard to special summon. More options for this card as well for the Tuner level 5 Synchro setup. Being able to use more of that setup on the field, being able to have the Synchro play for your setup of this monster onto the field. And also the 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, the 1 Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, and the 1 Baron de Fleur to finish off the rest of the Synchro monsters. And for the Link monsters, 1 copy of Link Karibo, 1 copy of Sky Striker Azalea, 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Nightmare Unicorn. I know you don't want to have a hand, but a lot of times if you do have that 1 card in hand, being able to at least go into Unicorn can help to get rid of it in your hand, using that discard to take care of one of your opponent's cards, with the last of the cards being 1 Access Code Talker and 1 Apollosa for some of the bigger Link monsters we can also get out. And then as for some of the go-to plays, this deck is very, very combo heavy, so it all depends on what you open up, what you can resolve with what you open up in the hand as well. But having cards like Void Apocalypse to at least be able to set up some of the cards in the graveyard, depending on what you may send off of it as well. Discarding the one card to send one Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, you can use this card to set up the many targets for the Infernity Archfiend special summon from the graveyard as well. And then if you have at least the cards in your hand that you can set up to make it so you have no cards left in your hand, you can then activate cards like your monster cards, this creepy little punk, giving you that Archfiend resource to then loop and add the plenty of different cards in your hand to the field. And without even taking up any of your normal summons, you can use the Archfiend Necromancer that you summoned out. Using it to then summon out the Infernity Archfiend, keeping your hand clear, can continue those searches. And with 3 of this card in the deck, it just helps for more and more consistency to add as well. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.